Well, that, of course, is Alberta Premier Alison Redford taking on NDP leader Tom Mulcair's comments about oil sands development in Washington last week. She's not the only politician to decry Mulcair's lack of support for the Keystone Pipeline project. Let's get back now to the power panel with this one. Elise Mills, Brad Levine, Rob Silver and Martin Patrickin are all here. And so Premier Redford says that NDP leader Tom Mulcair can have his own view on pipeline projects, but she's also implying that he's not being responsible. Is there really a debate going on about how to attain that growth, or is the NDP under fire for just not siding with the government and other Keystone proponents? Why don't you start with this one, Martin?
I think Mr. Mulcair realizes exactly what most other Canadians and almost all Americans realize, is that the Keystone project, Keystone Pipeline, is going to get built. It's a foregone conclusion. Parts of it have already been started. You know, Obama ixnayed part of it to placate the environmentalists. Now that he's been reelected, he can throw them under a bus. This thing's getting built. So I think Mulcair realizes that, and what he's doing now is playing to his base, saying to the left people in the NDP, saying, showing his furor at the fact that this thing's going to be built. It's going to be built. So it's politics. It's the same politics that Alison Redford is playing by decrying Mulcair. I mean, it's just politics. That's all it is. It
certainly makes quite a pretty good hot political issue domestically. I mean, Conservative ministers are even questioning Mulcair's patriotism, are they not, because of his stance on energy. Yeah. Will Canadians, do you think, buy into that argument? Let's try this one in Toronto. Rob Silver, have a go at this one. Do you think that Canadians will buy that Mr. Mulcair is being unpatriotic, disloyal, traitorous?
Well, I mean, first off, it's good to know that Marty guarantees that the pipeline's getting built are going to go tomorrow.
News to me, too.
TransCanada stock based on that information.
I do what I can.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Look, this is a hot tip from Marty Patrickin, lock of his week.
Just for you, Rob.
I appreciate it. Look, I think Mr. Mulcair is wrong on substance. I disagree with him on Keystone. But I think the notion that he's betrayed his country, that he's committed treason, essentially, as Mr. Wall and Ms. Redford said, is way over the top in terms of rhetoric. You know, Mr. Mulcair has every right in the world to be wrong, to go and tell whoever he wants what his position is on this issue. The Americans have no hesitation telling us what they think on all kinds of issues. So of course he can go and tell an American audience what he thinks. But I think politically he's messed up. I don't think Mr. Mulcair has had a very good couple of months. His whole raison d'etre coming out of the NDP leadership race was that he's ready for prime time. He's ready to be prime minister. And he's just been stumbling and bumbling from issue to issue. So he went down to Washington, said, I don't want to talk about Keystone. I'm not here to talk about Keystone. And yet the only thing other than, you know...
Well, Brad, I know you will not endorse the he's a traitor theory, but what about the bumbling and stumbling theory? You buy that?
Well, no, they're both wrong. I mean, first of all, I'm just on the patriotism, questioning patriotism. You know, I think that's when the Conservatives get a little desperate and they lose their potential audience when they start calling anybody who disagrees with their policy on a particular issue as anti-Canadian or unpatriotic. That's just nonsense. There is a diversity of opinion on Keystone in this country. He is articulating the policy of his caucus and of his leadership. This is not anything new. This has been a long-serving, developed policy of Mr. Mulcair. And you know, I'll agree with Rob on one point that he raised, and it is he has every right to express that, just as the Americans have every right to express their opinion off their soil as well. Now, as for Bob, I mean, there is not unanimity in this country over whether or not this pipeline should be built. Mr. Mulcair went down, I don't know, the days were planned many weeks and months ago. Obviously, Keystone was going to be an issue, but he didn't go down there to talk to them out of green lighting. He wasn't even talking about that. He was answering the questions of journalists, as you would want to do. And all he was saying
had to know what was going to come
we
up,
would do it differently.
What else were they going to ask him about, Brad?
But no,
well,
I mean, he didn't.
Question 1, 2, and 3, wasn't it?
The meetings that he set up weren't to talk about Keystone. The questions that he answered were to the journalists.
difference does that
He has
make?
no questions. But all he said was, I didn't come down to talk people out of building Keystone, but I'll answer your questions. And what he said was, we would things differently. We would build on Canadian soil an east-west pipeline that would refine and manufacture bitumen on Canadian soil to get a better price and to increase manufacturing jobs in Canada.
Right.
That is a legitimate point that he can raise.
Elise, why don't you
Terry,
get
I
in on
have
this?
to.
You think that
let's just
that
let's
it's-
just put an umbrella over all this. This is all about infactual statements, misinformation, and let's start with the first one. I don't believe neither Premier Wall or Premier Redford has ever called Thomas Mulcair a treasonist or a traitor. I think what we're referring to is maybe some commentary from print journalism. So let's take that off the table because premiers don't talk like that. Number two, I think it's disingenuous for Brad to even suggest that Mr. Mulcair went down to Washington and didn't think Keystone would come up. And from my understanding, there are some prominent Democrats that think the conversation went very differently. And so it's a game of he said, she said, or he said, and I wouldn't want to be Mr. Mulcair or the NDP coming out of that.
You're talking
The
about
third
Nancy
thing,
Pelosi, of course,
yes,
the minority
I am.
leader.
Yes, I am.
Democrat.
And also, I think Brad should know there's a big difference between west to east pipelines versus Keystone. These are two separate issues, and the problem with the NDP is that they lump everything together. The other issue is Mr. Mulcair obviously doesn't understand the manufacturing sector that he thinks the West has, basically decimated. Manufacturing in this country has rebooted because of the energy sector. So if he's trying to save those jobs, those 40,000 he thinks that are walking out across the border, he should look at home and look at Ontario where he wants to get votes. Look at Quebec where he's driving a huge voter strategy. And then really what he's doing at the end of the day on top of all that, honestly, Terry, is he's carving this province into two. Forget about, west to east pipelines. It's going to be the west versus the east and the east versus the west in Tom Mulcair's world.
Well, Martin says the pipeline's going to come along anyway. I'd love to give him a second crack at telling us why he thinks
it's
that,
interesting.
particularly since
there's
Elise
too
has
much-
just talked about Nancy Pelosi. She certainly didn't make positive noises about the pipeline. The president is a Democrat. He has not made positive noises about the pipeline. Why do you think that he's going to roll over and build it?
Because sections of it have already been built or are in process of being built. The other thing too, in one form or another, this is going to happen. Like I don't see how it can't, given the amount that's already been built and what's riding on it in terms of the economy. I just don't see this not being built in one form or another.
So do we all agree, though, that there is that much riding on it? I mean,
Yes.
that it may not find its way to Tidewater some other way?
Well, you know what, Terry, if I could just jump in here, Tom Mulcair and the NDP have something like $40 billion uncosted spending that they're putting forward in their platform. And if they want to pay for some of that spending, they obviously have to take a look at the enormous economic benefits something like Keystone would bring to Canada. And I just don't understand how he's excluding one for the other.
Okay, but we already did that segment on this show. Let's get back on pilot. Quick word from Brad and Rob on this question. Do you agree with Marty that there's so much riding on this, or can the oil not find some other way to Tidewater?
Well, listen, this is a decision for the White House to make. This is no longer in the jurisdiction of the House of Commons. This is up to the White House to make it, and they'll make it on domestic, political, and economic issues. This is out of Canada's hands at this stage.
Yeah, but I don't think that means that it's not important to Canada.
No,
exactly.
There are billions of dollars of tax revenue that Canada is leaving on the table because of the inefficiency of our current pipeline
Exactly.
system.
Thank you, Rob.
So,
Very
so
well said.
whether it's Keystone, and I disagree with Marty, I think it's much closer to 50-50 than 100% zero, or Gateway, which has its own challenges, or other pipelines, including an east-west pipeline. There's trillions of dollars of oil in the ground in Alberta that are not staying there. We need to find the most economic way to bring it to market.
Right.
Mr. Mulcair, with his value-added talk, is costing Canada, not adding any
Okay, we're going to have to move on. We have to take a quick break, but the power panel is sticking around. Quebec